Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. We appreciate you joining us. The Vols have a big win in basketball. I didn't see a lot of people. It's funny. You can always tell when the Vols are doing well. My phone doesn't buzz as much. When they aren't playing well, texts, tweets, emails, they're all coming in, people angry. When they're playing well, it's just silent on my phone. So last night, silence on the phone. It's a good thing the Vols blew out Kansas. We'll discuss that first. Then we're going to spend much of the show talking about the Josh Heupel hire, what that means, staff members, recruits, players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We got a lot to cover. I'm still amazed we ever did this show in 60 minutes for all those years. We got 90 minutes. Let's jump into it. First segment of today's program is brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. Folks, you never know when you might need an attorney. When you find yourself in a tight spot, in need of legal help, reach out to the names you know. Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. They've been a part of this community for years and years. That's who you turn to. Credible, intelligent, local. GarzaLaw.com to learn more. All right, let me welcome in the first wave of panelists for today. We have right here former Division I basketball player and former Vol assistant coach Mark Pankratz. Mark, thanks for joining us. Right there, Jimmy Himes from WNML. You can hear him Monday through Friday on Sports Talk from 3 to 7. Vince Ferrara, also from WNML. You can hear him all over the dial. You pop up all around the clock, all over the dial. So thanks for being with us, guys. Appreciate it. Let's start with, like I say, we'll have 3 VFLs out here later to talk a little football, but let's start with basketball. Vols get blown out by Florida. They lose in an ugly fashion to Missouri. They win in kind of ugly fashion against Mississippi State. Then they face traditional power Kansas and just blow their doors off from the get-go. Didn't see that one coming. 80-61, the Volunteers win yesterday. I'm going to start with you, Mark, before we get into general takeaways, just right off the bat. Was that because of something Kansas didn't do that other teams had been doing? Was that because of something Tennessee did differently? Or was Tennessee simply hot last night? They came out 8 of 13 from 3 where they're just hitting their shots.
Well, I think it always starts with making shots. Making shots makes things a lot easier, especially if it's coming from your 2 guys that you've planned on counting on throughout the entire season in Fulkerson and Pons. Those guys played their best basketball game in a while, and that just carried over to the younger guys. I think some of the lineup changes really helped. But the way that we rebounded the basketball, the way that we did shoot the basketball and moved it around, was able to take advantage of a lot of Kansas's weaknesses. And we just played with more confidence, and it was a fun basketball game to watch.
Those teams have kind of been a mirror reflection of each other recently. Kansas has had their struggles. Both of those were top 10 teams to start the year, and they've both fallen back from 15 to 20. But Kansas has now lost, 3 of the last 4, 4 of the last 5. So it's good. In terms of NCAA play, it's good to have that one behind you. You don't want to be the one that's struggling worse of the 2 that are struggling, especially if they wind up making the tournament a smaller field. You want to get that one. What was your main takeaway from that game? Let's just start with the one thing that you didn't expect to see yesterday that you did see.
Well, and we'll diagram it here in a minute, but Fulkerson, knocking down a couple jump shots, the way the offense was spread out, the way that we defended and got in gaps more instead of just putting our hands out there, the role definition, right, with Springer now starting, and then Bailey kind of getting into his role off the bench. You can start seeing this team coming together in different ways, but it starts at the top. It starts with Pons. It starts with Fulkerson. Those guys playing the way that they did offensively just trickle down to everybody else.
All right, takeaways, guys. What stood out to you?
If you shoot 53% from the field and 8 of 13 on threes and out-rebound the opponent by 15, you're going to beat pretty much anybody in the country, except maybe Gonzaga. I don't know.
Yeah.
But those numbers were phenomenal. But I'll say this, too, and I was very impressed with Tennessee. They looked so much better. I can't discount the fact, though, that the schedule makers might have helped Tennessee. Tennessee played on a Tuesday. Kansas played on a Thursday and then had to turn around on Saturday. I'm not so sure they were the most rested team I've ever watched. But take nothing away from what Tennessee did. I thought that was a fantastic performance against a quality opponent.
Yeah, and that Kansas Thursday game is because they had to reschedule their TCU game, which they actually won and broke a 3-game losing streak. But let's be real, that's not the typical Kansas team. That's not as good of a Kansas team as they played well and lost to last year. But in addition to what some of those guys have talked about, I thought the dribble drive defense and keeping Kansas's guards from getting in the lane with regularity, that's as good a perimeter defense and stopping those drives as I think we've seen this year. Another thing that was really important was something that the players talked about in the postgame, including Josiah Jordan-James, and he said that they had a heart-to-heart last night and talking about defining their roles, sort of a come to Jesus, and using Josiah Jordan-James's words. And I think that really resonated. And then something else I think was very important was beating Kansas, because they were 0 for 2. The Fulkerson, Pons, those guys 0 for 2. Because Barnes hadn't had the greatest history against Bill Self in Kansas. I think all those factors came in and really gave this team extra motivation. But make no mistake, Jaden Springer being in the lineup changes this team. They're just his IQ, his playmaking, his versatility, and go on and on. And him being out there from the start, I think, helped big time.
Mark, rank these guys in terms of their point. Fulkerson and Pons are up there, but this team, when Springer isn't, you're right, Vince. It's not the exact same team. What do you look at in terms of value to this team, importance to this team? You don't want to lose Fulkerson. You don't want to lose Pons. Is Springer the third guy? Or would you rank him?
It's hard. I mean, when he's shooting 56% from three, the way that he passes the basketball, the way that he can defend, I mean, he impacts at all levels. But I also think it's a trickle down to where it can put Bailey in a more dual role responsibility as opposed to having to be more of a scorer. So he is that probably that third guy.
Yves Pons, as we mentioned, great game last night. He scored 17, 13, and 20 in his last 3 games. It's the first time all season he's had 3 games in a row where he scored in double figures. He shot over 50% in each of those games. First time this year he's had over 50% shooting from the field in 3 straight games. Yesterday it mattered because everything was rolling. But he'd been scoring against Mississippi State. It was still kind of a lackluster performance overall from a team perspective. He started this scoring streak against Missouri, and it didn't make a difference. So in terms of, if you look at this team and you say, well, if Pons doesn't score, they're not going to win. It really doesn't work that way. Sometimes he plays well and gets his points and they don't take off. But what you saw yesterday, what was the difference in those points from Yves Pons yesterday as compared to those other games when the other guys weren't kind of following the lead, so to speak?
Well, I think it's the shots that they're shooting and ultimately making. But the shots that they're shooting are the open shots. They were shooting with confidence. They know out of the offense where they're coming from. When they got in that little skid there, they were hesitant to take open shots. They were turning shots down, which then means they're holding the basketball more, which then they're taking late clock shots, which is putting us in more turnover-prone positions. And then it's a long shots, which then lead to transition baskets. So I just think them taking good shots out of their offense is now leading to more makes, but also there's better opportunity to rebound and then better chance to defend those makes or misses.
And Jaden Springer didn't play in one of those losses, right?
Right.
So he is. I thought Mike Schwartz, the associate head coach, was talking about Springer and just mentioned the versatility that he brings that Vince was touching on, that he can shoot outside, he can drive and finish, he can drive and dish, he can rebound, he can play defense. So he has become obviously a very important part of this team. But also with when you talk about Pons scoring, I think the supporting cast last night was so much better with so many different people contributing, which is why I think there was a big difference in the outcome against Kansas as opposed to Missouri.
Well, something else that Mike Schwartz mentioned this week that you know, Jimmy, is he said, hey, we have to be on point in the paint and in rebounding. And you check both of those boxes because they out-rebounded Kansas by a lot, by like 15, and then they outscored him in the paint as well. And another difference with Pons is, yes, he had scoring in some of those other games, but I thought he was perimeter, he was 3-point heavy in some of those games, as opposed to, yes, he hit some 3-pointers in the first half, but you saw him with the mid-range shots. You saw him get a putback and then ball fake and then put up a baseline jumper. It was more versatile. He had more threats. And I think it opens things up when Fulkerson and Pons are both rolling together as threats in the paint.
And this is obvious, but I think it's important to note, they also came out at the start of both halves hitting their shots. I mean, for a team that's been wobbling a little bit on offense, probably didn't hurt their confidence at all to see those first few shots fall in. Kansas gets the last bucket of the first half, so you think, okay, are they going to start to make a run here? No, Tennessee was ready in the second half.
Well, Kansas, I think, started 1 of 15 from three-point range.
That helps.
They hit a few late, which skews the stats, but they were awful shooting threes for the first 30 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a streaky sport that I think that the confidence factor of getting out to the early lead probably, that ball started rolling. One team's a little tired, one team's feeling itself, they're on the home court. Great win for Tennessee. We'll talk next. We'll send Mark over to the Wipey board, actually. What has been struggling? I've asked him these questions in this segment without him getting too much detail because we're going to be diagramming some of this stuff next. And by we, I mean he. That's next on the Sports Source. Come on back.